Ding-a-doop-a-dee. Alexander Jefferson, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, United States Air Force, and today is August the 9th, and we are here at the Yankee Air Museum at Willow Run, Michigan, 20 or 30 miles out of Detroit. Thank you. Good to be here, Catherine Stoll and Jennifer Krett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure to interview Mr. Jefferson, and we will just be rotating our questions
Good.
back and forth, and feel free to elaborate further. You know, if there's something that we've left open, feel free to fill in any
Some
blanks.
things we haven't covered.
Yeah, I know. I can't imagine, but
Okay.
the amount of time that you spent, I think we'll have plenty of questions to ask. But which ward did you serve in, just for record's sake?
This was in World War II. I went in April, August of 42. I finished college, Clark College, in Atlanta, Georgia. And you must understand that everyone was being drafted for World War II. In fact, in my graduation class, Clark College, there were only 4 men. The rest of the guys had gone to the Army, Navy, Marines. Went to Detroit in September, volunteered for the Army Air Corps, and passed a test. I only weighed 115 pounds. The guy told me to go downstairs and drink some water so I could make 116. And I put in the reserves, went to Tuskegee Army Airfield in April of 1943, and completed training. 9 months later, I became out as a second lieutenant in January 1944. We'll cover the training in detail later on.
Okay.
But spent 1 month at Tuskegee Army Airfield, which is 40 miles west of Montgomery, Alabama, 10 miles away from Tuskegee Institute at that time. Spent 1 month later flying P-40s at Tuskegee Army Airfield. And then in March, I was transferred to Selfridge Air Force Base, where I spent 3 months flying the P-39, getting ready for overseas training. Because at that time, the 332nd had 3 squadrons, and they were flying P-39's Coast Patrol outside of Naples, Italy. I was slated to be a replacement pilot for the 332nd flying those P-39s. Spent the 3 months at Selfridge, and while we were at Selfridge clamoring to get into the officers club, we had a colonel that told us, hell no. Negroes will not go to the officers club on Selfridge Air Force Base. And one day I was out flying gunnery over Lake Huron, and the radio came on, very crisply said, all officers report to the post theater on the double, as you are. We landed at Selfridge, walked to the post theater, and at the time there were approximately 35 or 40 black officers on the post, with about 120 white officers. We were milling around in the post theater, and somebody walked down the hall. There was 2-star general at ease, and we were told that as long as he was in command, there would be no socialization between white and colored officers. That was Thursday. Can't remember the exact date, but it was in May. At ease, we sat down, and they locked the gates, which mean the black officers could not leave the post. White officers could leave. That meant we were under arrest. Saturday morning, Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning, they loaded us onto a Pullman train with our mechanics. All of the mechanics were black. Train left Selfridge, went to Port Huron, Michigan, through the tunnel, across Ontario to Niagara Falls, and we proceeded to go south. 3 days later, we arrived at Walterboro Air Force Base, one of the small airfields built along the eastern coast in case of an emergency invasion. And when the train stopped, every 10 feet there was a little white soldier with a rifle, hand grenades, and they were told that we had rioted at Selfridge with a bunch of expletive deleted words. I was only there for 2 weeks, where I was sent across to, well, we were sent to Virginia, Hampton Roads, put on a ship, and we were sent to Ramitelli. First of all, we landed at Oran, then to Naples, and by truck across Italy to Ramitelli. We arrived the morning of the last flight of P-47s. The three squadrons are flying P-47s, and we were in a end of a truck, sitting at the end of the runway. We saw a P-47 take off, stall, and boom, go in, explode. Our introduction to combat. I was assigned to a tent, and 3 days later, down to the airfield to take transition flying. Go down to the plane, no tech orders, no books, no nothing. You walk to the plane, and the mechanic helps you get in it. He said, this is the landing gear, here's the throttle, here's how you check your mags, here's the radio button. Bang, you take off, and I flew for an hour and a half, transition to the P-51 Mustang. 2 days later, I flew on my first mission. You take off, in formation, learning how to fly this airplane. So I finally had 18 missions and one half. 18 full long-range missions in the P-51, escorting the B-17s and B-24s from Italy to France, Italy to Germany. I went to Berlin 2 times, Italy to Ploesti 3 times, and the last mission was a mission where I was strafing. The 18 missions were long-range, high altitude. The 19th mission was a short mission to southern France from Italy to strafe radar stations on the coast previous to the invasion of southern France. That was the one I was shot down on. Went in, as illustrated in my book. I was in the last 4 flights of the 301st Fighter Squadron to fire on the mission on the radar stations. And as we went in, we dove in at 400 miles an hour, and as I went right across the top of the target, shell came up through the floor, and the hole went at the top of the canopy. We were doing about 400 miles an hour, so consequently, it's going too fast and too low to bail out. So I pulled back on the stick to get some altitude, and as I went up, you reach up on the instrument panel, pull a little red knob, the whole canopy goes off. And as I pulled up, turned the stick loose, and when I did that, the nose abruptly dropped. And when the nose dropped, I hit this, you have straps here with a big buckle. You hit that buckle, they all come loose. So when I was here, and when the nose dropped, like this, pull it up like this, and when the nose dropped, I was thrown out. And as I was thrown out, I saw the tail go by, about 4 or 5 feet away. And when the tail went by, I pulled a D-ring to open a parachute. And when I did that, I remember looking at it and said, oh heck, I'm too low. But I'm looking down at the trees. I can see those darn trees so close. So I remember looking at it and said, oh hell, too low. And bang, the parachute popped. I'm in the trees. And now, number 1 and number 3, they got through. They looked back and they saw my plane go in. And when I got back a year later, I talked to these guys. They said, we thought you were killed because we didn't see the plane, we didn't see you get out. My parents got a KIA telegram. No, when I hit the ground in the trees, the German soldiers were right there. They saw Oxo. I said, "Oh hell, you got me." They helped me get out of the parachute and get out of the trees. Now, before I was hit, I saw Danny. He was number 2. I saw him when he got hit. He put it down in the water because he was afraid to bail out. So the Germans went out and picked him up and brought him on. And the 2 of us went up the Rhone Valley together. But the next day, we went through Avignon. And that's the next night, 2 nights later, where we saw Macon, Richard Macon. He was at a different target. And we picked him up, and the 3 of us went on up to Avignon to Dulag Luft, up in Germany, up in Austria. Macon had a broken neck, a broken collarbone, so the Germans put him in a hospital. We didn't see him until we got back to the States. But Robert Daniels and I went on up through Dulag, where we were interrogated, and by cart, by train, by push cart, we arrived in Stalag Luft 3, 80 miles east of Berlin, on the Polish border. That's where these pictures were taken.
How many days from when you were captured to when you got to Stalag Luft 3?
Oh gosh, it's in my book.
A week? More than a week, or?
Oh no, it was about 2 weeks.
Okay.
About approximately, let's see, 3 days, 2 days, about a week and a half, 10 days, until I got to Stalag 3.
Okay.
That's where the camp was entire officers. Geneva Convention. So I literally set the war out for the 5 days I was 5 months at Stalag, until the Russians started coming through. That's when we were transferred to 7A.
Coming in through Poland, is
Through
what
Poland.
you're saying, right?
Yeah. We didn't want to be recaptured by the Russians either. And the German guards, oh, by the way, the German guards were the Volkswagen, these old men, white haired. And they were afraid of the Russians. They were afraid of the Russians. They didn't want to be captured by the Russians either. And we were put out on the road January the 27th or 28th, 1945. Temperature was 20 below zero. Cold. And the German guards were along with us. And after 2 or 3 miles, they gave up. We had to put one of those Russian guards on a wagon. See, we had a little wagon, and we carried the gun. We had to carry their guns for them. They were afraid. They were scared of the Russians. That's why they wanted to go with us. We went from Stalag 3. We finally got to Sprimberg, where we then put on 14/8s, the French trains that carried 40 men or 8 horses. And from there, we went to Stalag 7A. Took a day and a half or 2 days to get to 7A. And when we got there, the place was filthy. It was full of Russian troops, Russian prisoners. It was full of bed bugs and fleas, so we caught hell. We stayed outside for 2 or 3 days. We were in tents. Yeah, we were in tents until they cleaned up and fumigated the barracks.
Now, what year and month would that have been that you arrived in the second?
That was oh Lord, February, March. No, later than that.
It was winter, though.
It was winter. It was winter. It was winter. February or March,
Okay.
45. February or March 45. Because we were in 7A. Yeah, 7A.
Can I, for clarification, where were the majority of your flights flown over?
Majority over Germany.
Okay.
We went to France a couple of times. Majority over Germany. Vienna, Wiener Neustadt. Bombing, escorting the bombers that left from Italy to Germany.
Okay.
Those are the 18 missions. We went to Ploesti, Romania, once or twice, but major over Germany.
Okay. Thank you.
Going back to being in the camp that you stayed at, or the camps, what were racial tensions like there?
Oh, when I first went in, I was the third black into the camp. When I first got there, quite naturally, you got to understand, some of these men had been in prison camp for 2.5 or 3 years. They did not know that blacks were flying. So constantly when I walk in with a gold bar on my collar, I'm a second lieutenant, I've got a set of wings. What the hell are you doing here? Now remember, inside of Stalag Luft 3, we had military discipline. The senior American officer was in charge. I never talked to the Germans inside the camp because the German officer talked to the Germans. I was accepted because the word spread that blacks are flying red-tailed P-51 Mustangs. A week after I got there, a a B-17 crew came in from Italy. When they saw me, they ran over and grabbed me. God damn it, if you'd have been with us, you red-tails, we would have not been shot down. Word spread throughout the camp. Red-tails from P-51, flying red-tails, were the guys who brought you back. And a reputation. And hell, after that, pilots are pilots. Bingo. I was accepted. Camaraderie.
And some were the Mustangs, and then what were the other kind of?
Well, they were flying the P-47. We call it the P-47, the Jug. The Jug. It did not have the range of a Mustang. It only had a 300-mile range. So after that, the bombers were attacked by the Germans. They'd wait until P-47s had to come back. They didn't have fuel enough. But this darn thing went all the way to Berlin and back. We had
From where? What was where were you? What reference point are you taking off from when you say to Berlin and back?
from Italy.
Okay.
From Italy to Berlin and back. 1,800 miles.
And this one is named Margot.
This is Margot. This is Margot, a P-51 Mustang. Normally we had 110 gallons underneath each wing, 92 gallons inside of each wing, and an 85-gallon tank sitting behind you. 6.5 hours. This is the reason why we could escort the B-17s and B-24s from Italy to Berlin and back. Never drink coffee in the morning before a mission.
Because you're not getting out.
That's right. This is Margot. Margot sent me a Dear John letter. No. Alex, I got married, but we're still friends. Coming back. When you come back, come to see me. But I didn't worry about Margot. Some of the guys went bananas. They went crazy. Because Margot was in Washington, D.C. Patricia was in Atlanta. Mary was in Chicago.
Options.
Philadelphia was Juliet. Hell, I didn't worry about Margot.
Did you leave the name on the plane?
Margot was a good catch name. It was because all the other guys in the squadron, they had their girlfriends' names, and I picked out Margot because it was a catch name. It sounded good. She was a good-looking girl too. Golly.
For clarification, were you drafted or did you sign
Oh, no,
up?
I volunteered.
You volunteered. Okay,
Yeah,
I wanted to make sure I
volunteered.
had that.
Yeah, we volunteered.
Okay.
Can you tell us why the tail fin was red?
Oh, air identification.
Okay.
In Italy, there were 4 P-51 groups. 3 groups were by whites, and we were black. Now, the 15th Air Force allotted us red for identification. So when you saw this airplane over Berlin with a red tail, you knew it belonged to the 332nd Fighter Group. One group was a yellowtail, the 52nd Fighter Group, yellowtails. Checkerboard, yellow and black squares. The 52nd, no, the 325th. 325th. Red and white stripe was the 31st Fighters Group. So when you, air identification. When the B-17s saw us, they knew who we were.
So did you guys paint them yourselves?
Yeah, we painted them. The instructions came from the 15th Air Force headquarters, and our mechanics painted the tails red. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, in the movie, here I go again, in the movie with Fishburne, Fishburne told his mechanic, "You've got some extra red paint, just paint the darn thing." That's a bull. How can a pilot tell his mechanic to paint the tail red so that the whole Air Force over Berlin could identify the group? See, this is Hollywood. Let me hit something else. In the movie, the young man buzzed the tower. Everybody buzzed the tower. We all buzzed the tower. It was fun. They were getting ready to eliminate him from the program. Going to wash him out. We call it washout. And in frustration, he ran out, got into an airplane, and proceeded to commit suicide. He flew into a hangar. He saw all the fire. Bull. It gave the wrong connotation to the American public. Where a black man run up against adversity, he chickens out and commits suicide. Black men do not commit suicide. Period. Never happened. But you see, it gave a wrong impression. That's why every time I go out, I said, we never committed suicide. We're too busy doing the right thing. Why we have the record of never losing a bomber, that is a myth. We did lose some. But we stayed with the bombers all the time. And we lost less. We went, by the way, I'm part of a research team. We went to Maxwell Field, research, and we looked at the bomber missing reports from all the bomber groups out of Italy. And we found out that we lost less than 25 bombers to German fighters. This is a matter of record. I was a member of the research team.
How many total bombers do you think? Three?
We escorted more than 4,000 or 5,000 bombers. Because on every mission, there were at least 200 to 300 bombers. We had how many missions? My God, I can't remember. 1,500 missions. You have to go back into the record, cold record. But out of all of our missions, we lost we found a total of 25, maybe more than that.
Incredible.
Compared to the other groups, they lost a heck of a lot more. Because we stayed with the bombers because of our commanding officer. Here I go again. The one, the only, Colonel Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. See, I wanted to be an ace. I wanted to shoot down a German. But Colonel Davis said, stay in formation. Over the B-17s and B-24s. Now, if they made, the B-17s, they only made 160 miles an hour. If we did 160 at altitude, we'd stall out. So we did 220. All 16 airplanes of our squadron, the 301st, back and forth over the B-17s. Let me go ahead. If the B-17s were at 25,000, We'd put one squadron, 16 airplanes, the 99th, at 26,000, back and forth. We'd put another squadron, the 100th, at 27,000. We put another squadron, the 301st, at 28,000. Then the 302nd at 29,000. All 64 airplanes, back and forth, each at 1,000 feet apart, over the bombers. The German fighters would never come in because we had so goddamn many airplanes above them.
And, but did they know you were there? I mean, they knew the numbers, they knew what
The
heights you
Germans
were
could
at?
see us.
Okay.
Somebody would say, bogeys at 9 o'clock. We'd look off at 9 o'clock, 10, 15 miles, little black specks, German fighters, sitting there. They would never come in as long as we stayed with the bombers. Part of our record, we never lost the bombers to German fighters. I never shot my guns at a German fighter because I stayed in formation over the bombers. Now later on, the Germans had the Me-262s, the German fighters. Then they came through.
What were those called?
Me-262, German fighters, the jets, the German jet. See, we did 400 miles an hour, 410, 420, something like that.
And the Mustang.
The Mustang. And the Me-262s did 550. They could go us through Zoom. Now, Roscoe Brown says he shot down the first MiG. He was not the first. Lane, I read this. It's in it. Lane was the first. The Me-262s went through the bomber formation, pulled up and slowed up, and the jet and the guys in the P-51 Mustangs full forward doing 424, followed them because they slowed up right in behind them and shot 3 of them down. The German pilots were off the ball. That's the reason why they got caught. Normally, the Mustangs would follow the jets to their home base, and when they land, you could catch them and shoot them down because the jets were only good for 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes in the air, where we're sitting there 2.5 or 3 hours, so we had plenty of fuel.
The advantages and disadvantages of the speed, but not the
That's right.
the time.
Exactly.
What made you choose Army, or did you have options when you
no.
you volunteered?
Well, first place, I was going to be drafted in 1942. Everybody's going to the Army. I didn't want to be drafted because if I were drafted, I would go to the quartermaster. Heavy, nasty, dirty work. Buck private. Buck private made $21 a month. I'm black, I'm a Negro. Opportunity to go to the Army Air Corps. Oh, by the way, at that time the Army was going through Clark, all through the colleges, to get men, black men, to go to the Army Air Corps. They were opening up the Army Air Corps. And when I volunteered, I want to volunteer for the Army Air Corps. Be a pilot. Be an officer. Why? You made $150 a month. Gold bar with a set of wings and all the pretty girls. I ain't crazy.
It paid off in that POW camp, though.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. And well, let's face it was exciting.
Sure.
Learning how to fly. It was exciting.
Now, all of your flight training was
Right there in Tuskegee.
Tuskegee. And that was the only place in the country that it was going on?
At that time, because we were segregated. The idea that a black man could learn how to fly, go to a white, no. See? That's why, by the way, Congress had to allot $4 million to build Tuskegee Army Airfield, to allow us to fly. Segregated. Now, it wasn't until 1948 when President Truman desegregated the armed forces and opened up training for blacks in 1948. Any black going into the Army Air Corps then went to Randolph, and he was integrated with the rest. But this is America. This is the United States of America. Racism and segregation and discrimination of the war.
Was your basic training there then?
Primary training, basic training. Oh, first of all, we went to, let me back up. First went in, go to Tuskegee Army Airfield for two months of training, basic training. Then went to Tuskegee Institute, because Tuskegee Institute signed a contract with the Army to train us to fly primary. There's a little field called Moton Field, M-O-T-E-O-N, owned by Tuskegee Institute. Tuskegee Institute hired black men to teach us to fly primary in PT-17s. We were there for 2 months. Then we'd go back to Tuskegee Army Airfield for basic training, for BT basic training, white instructors, officers, because no black men had been in the Army long enough to be an officer. All of our basic training was officers, and advanced training officers at Tuskegee Army Airfield. Basic, advanced, and P-40s. When we graduated as officers, we were there for 1 month flying a P-40. The men who were training as bomber pilots were flying B-25s at Tuskegee Army Airfield after they graduated. And I was there for a month or 2 months flying the P-40. Then go trained at Selfridge in the P-39 for 3 months. That's all part of our training.
Did you know of any other people from the Detroit area that were with you at Tuskegee?
Yeah, the guy who was in my class, Wardell Polk, he washed out. He started in my class. We both went in April 43. And I graduated 9 months later, January 44. Wardell Polk washed out. Bob O'Neill from Detroit, he was in my class. We graduated together. I did not know them before the war, because I left Detroit out of Chadsey High School, and went to Clark College. And I was at Clark College until 42. And but I know Bob O'Neill because he and I both went to Tuskegee together. But that's the only time I knew them.
What high school did you attend?
Chadsey.
Okay.
Chadsey High School.
And what area of Detroit was that in?
West side.
Okay.
Far west side. On McGraw. Yeah, on the far west side of
Was the
McGraw.
Outer Drive or?
No.
No.
McGraw. Well, approximately 2 miles from Dearborn. Mhm.
Did you have to be an officer to fly?
Yes.
Did you have to be an officer prior to the pilot, or was it because you were a pilot, you
No,
got
as you
your-
graduated after a certain number of hours, you became a second lieutenant. And only second lieutenants were pilots. Before the war, there were some men who were sergeants, but they phased out that phase of sergeants flying. After that, only second lieutenants and other officers as you progress. Flight officers, I'm sorry, there's a thing called flight officers. They were just like pilots, just like officers, second lieutenants.
Okay. And what ship did you take to get over to Europe? What was your
Oh, by boat.
yeah? What boat you were on, and what do you remember about that trip or landing or?
There was a lot about that. We were at Walterboro, and we're
Where's
going by
Walterboro?
train. Walterboro, Walter, Walter, Boro, Walterboro, and we left Walterboro to go by truck to catch the train to go up to Virginia. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot. Let me back up. Going from Walterboro, we had buzzed the tower. Here I go again. I'm backing up. Flying P-39s. Dryden. What the hell is Dryden's first name? Dryden had been over at the 99th, had flown his 25 missions, and he was sent back to Selfridge as our instructor. And he was with us at Walterboro to go to, and we were, the first flight at Walterboro, Dryden led us. He was flying lead, I was flying on his wing, Bob O'Neill and Red Driver. The first flight, Sunday morning at Walterboro. And we buzzed the hell out of Walterboro. Dryden went on one side of the church steeple of the church downtown. I went on the other side of the church steeple. We landed, and out of it all, Charlie Dryden was court-martial. Red Driver, O'Neill, and I went overseas. We left the next week by truck to Yamasee, the little town 20 miles away, to catch the train going to Virginia to catch the boat. We were not supposed to have any ammunition in our Thompson submachine guns going overseas. There were 15 of us going overseas. Naturally, we had ammunition. A couple of us had a couple of clips. We got to Yamasee, to this little wood rail to the front window, and the lady says, "Y'all boys go round to the back. We don't serve no niggers at the front." So we said, "The hell with it." We sat there on the railroad tracks until the train came through. Meanwhile, Colonel DeBase had sent Colonel DeBase a ride about 20 minutes later with 4, 5, 8 or 10 guys. So now y'all boys get on the boat. And we said, hell no. Meanwhile, the train came through, and the conductor said, "Come on, guys, get on the train." We got on the train, leaving the base commander with all of his guards, the MP guards. We sat there on that train all the way up to Patrick Henry, Virginia, for a couple of days. I didn't go to sleep for a couple of days until we got on the boat. Nothing happened, and the boat took 7 days zigzagging across the Atlantic all by itself. We went through the Gibraltar to Oran, and we arrived from Oran to Naples a week later, where we spent a couple of days in hotels. God, it was great. Then by truck across Italy all the way across Italy by truck, where we arrived at Ramitelli the next morning to watch the last cruise, the last mission of the P-47s, where that P-47 took off, and Laird killed himself. That was Laird, our rib. Which, see, from the time we left Waldoboro, it was at least a week, maybe 10 days, 2 weeks.
Is that John Laird?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Until we arrived at Ramitelli.
Well, what was the story with John Laird?
All we know that he must have had some. He arranged his elevators or the controls on the airplane wrong, because the plane took off, got airborne, stalled, and crashed. He was killed. That's all we can surmise. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any other?
Yeah, we might need to move on to your experience of the POW camp, and then we'll talk about your experience of Dachau and whether or not you had a role there or walk through or whatever. So if you talk about the camp and
Yeah.
maybe just start about the first one, then we'll go to the next one. But this pictures you have in front of you are from the first camp you went
First
to,
camp.
correct? Which was named
Stalag Luft 3. I was in a room with 9 other men. It was rugged. 2 double bunks, 4, and 2 triple bunks. And no bad experiences. We literally set the war up. And we didn't have anything else to do, so I drew pictures of the room. And as I remember now, Jonesy, one of the guys named Jones, blew a trumpet, and he was in the orchestra. Many of us during the day didn't have anything to do, so we walked around the perimeter of the camp to while away the time. Others, we had classes. There were different classes, types of classes: poetry, music, classes in math, art classes. There were a lot of classes.
in German.
Some in German, most in English, because in South Camp there were, close to 2,000 men. And
And the whole time you were at that camp, you were in the South camp?
yes, because South Camp was completely surrounded by a 10-foot barbed wire fence. And from the 10-foot barbed wire fence, in about 100 feet, there was a small railing, a small wire, about a foot high. You could not touch that because the German guards in the tower would shoot. Between that and the 10-foot fence. That was verboten.
I'm going to show these pictures into the camera, maybe to show what some of your drawings.
Some of the drawings I did of the men in the room. I suspect they can be seen. I know they can be seen.
Try and zoom in a little bit to see.
Zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, if you can hold it
There.
maybe straight up there. There we go.
I drew these pictures of the men knitting.
Yeah, I'm going to just bring it right up to the camera. If you can tell me when it's close enough, then he can explain while I'm...
Well, let's go back.
Yeah.
Down.
Yeah, down a little bit. There we go.
There's the
Okay.
camp, Stalag Luft 3, with the barracks.
And that was your personal drawing from being on the ground.
That's right.
Not an aerial view,
No.
although it is an aerial view.
This is the way I perceived
What
it
you
because
perceived.
we walked this perimeter all the time. We walked the perimeter.
And that's just the south.
South Camp, yes. There's the room I was in. My room. 10 men to a room.
And was the other pilot that you came in with in with you from your
No.
unit?
No. There were only, out of the old men, all the men in South Camp, there were 4 blacks. And they were in a different barracks, a different room, different barracks. I knew they were there, but we'd see each other every now and then.
So after you crashed, you went there or you went somewhere else first?
Well, when I crashed, I was in the southern France, outside the city of Toulon. And it took, a week, 10 days to get to this place.
That's good. You want to show the actual photograph in comparison to your
All right.
drawing? I think that's interesting. Your perception of what it looked like, and then this is the actual scale drawing, right? Very similar. Very
Hold
similar.
tight now. Wait a minute.
And then there was
Let me
another one.
indicate. Let me indicate South Camp.
Let me see if there. There we go. Looks very similar to your drawings that you did from
That's right.
the ground.
South Camp is the one at the bottom.
How many African American officers in the whole?
4.
So South Camp is where?
On the bottom of that map there, north, obviously on the top, and then south. And you said you were treated well, and
Oh, yes.
the food was less than desirable, but better than
the food was
some,
less than
maybe.
desirable.
Yeah. So there's a comparison. The 2 maps.
Wow.
Yours is actually much more detailed, but
Because I walked the perimeter.
sure, you had all the details in front of you, but
No, South Camp is. Now, the food. All the Germans could give us was potatoes and cooked barley, like oatmeal, every other day. And the black bread. The bread was it weighed 10 pounds because it was half sawdust. Remember now, flour is at a premium in Germany. So they mixed up the flour with sawdust in order to fill your stomach. They give, and we could cut that bread an eighth of an inch, it would have it hold its consistency. If it had not been for International Red Cross food parcels, we would have died. Now during the 9 months I was in Germany, I only lost 4 pounds. Hell, I only started in at about 116, 118. So I came out 112,
and how tall were you?
5'6".
That's pretty.
Now some of the
You were
men,
thin going in.
some of the men had been there for 2.5 or 3 years. And they lost anywhere from 6 to 8 to 10 pounds. International Red Cross food parcels. Small cans of Spam, chocolate D-bar,
That came from Red Cross.
International Red Cross. Yes.
And what is D-bar?
The D-bar is a chocolate bar. Small cans of, small boxes of raisins, small box of sugar, small piece, quarter pound of cheese. And if it had not been for International Red Cross food parcels, we would have died.
How often did you get those?
We were supposed to get 1 box per week, per man. But it turned out we only got a half a box. So what they would do, they give 10 men in a room. So we got 5 boxes. And we would mix the food so that with the, say the family style. So we ate family style. Have a cook. One guy's job was to cook. He would be the cook, and he would take the food and prepare it.
Normally, did you go to a mess hall?
No, we ate right there in the room.
Even without the boxes? They would bring the food to you normally? Okay.
International Red Cross. They gave us paper, crayons, paint, baseball equipment, football equipment, basketball equipment, ice hockey, International Red Cross. And we were treated, as many times I'd go to high schools and I'd talk about life as a POW, and they said, well, Mr. Jefferson, McCain was beaten. I said, hey, wait a minute, back up. Where was McCain? Oh, Far East. They have different mindset. The Japanese had a different mindset. Vietnamese had a different mindset. They would not surrender, they commit suicide. So therefore they said, if you surrendered, you're more like a dog. They treated you horribly. But, here again I cover Geneva Convention. Between the United States, England, France, they signed the Geneva Convention. How you treat POWs. You put the officer in the camp, do not make them work. You put the enlisted men in the camp, you can make them work. International Red Cross, I was treated as an officer. I was treated better in Germany than I was be treated in Mississippi at that time. They were still lynching blacks in Mississippi. Medgar Evers was shot. What was he doing? Trying to get black people to register to vote.
That was his crime, yes.
There it is. See?
Can you elaborate a little bit about when your stay at that camp ended? The Russians were coming in through what was Poland, and so the Germans moved you south to, what was the name of that camp?
Stalag 7A.
Okay.
First of all, we were listening to the BBC. We had small radios. Guys had put together small radios. How they came in, I don't know. But we were listening to small radios, secret. And we knew exactly where the Allied forces were at all times. Now the Germans would put up we had a bulletin board outside, and they had a big bulletin board, and they put up the progress. It was always 2 days late. We'd read it, of course, but we knew where the hell. We knew exactly where the Russians were coming, and we didn't want to be rescued by the Russians anyway. The Germans who were guarding us, they didn't want to be rescued. The old men, the men who were guarding us were the Volkswagen, the old men, 65 and 70 years old. They were scared of the Russians. And when the time came, we knew they were going to come, and we were prepared. We had already knitted gloves and scarves, got all of it. What food we had, we saved, and when the time came, we got on the road all together, and we proceeded to march. Great.
So you walked from one to the other?
We walked about 80 miles. It was 20 below zero.
And where did you sleep on the way?
Momentarily, for the first time, we slept at a glass factory inside of it was 20 below zero and it was colder than hell. We got to a glass factory. That's where we slept the first night. And from there to another place, the second place I can't remember, but like a huge barn. And the third place we finally made the railroad station at called Sprimberg. That's all I remember. If I were home, I would have the places where we stepped with illustrations.
Were they happenstance, or did they have it planned where you would stay?
This is all planned by the German government, by the Germans.
So they knew where you were
They
going to
knew.
stop and
They knew. And it was all planned ahead of time. Now, meanwhile, we were on South Camp. North Camp was also walking that same way. I don't know if they were before us or behind us. I don't know. West Camp, the same. They might have gone a different way. Maybe 15 or 20 miles separated but we all wound up at Stalag 7A. That's what I remember.
and was that pretty full when you got there, or
Oh, it was
was
full.
waiting for you? Oh,
It was full. And as I remember, Russian prisoners were across the barbed wire. And the Russian prisoners, they looked like hell. The Germans must have treated them horribly, because we got to the place where we were throwing food over the fence to them. And some of the clothing. We were throwing clothing across the fence to them. They were despicable looking.
you think they were treated differently? Now,
Oh,
was
yes.
that camp an officer camp also?
I don't know. Now, when we got to 7A, there might have been some other enlisted personnel in that camp. I don't remember. It was conglomeration. God, there were thousands of guys there. There were thousands.
Were you allowed to keep any insignia of your rank or anything?
We
Okay.
kept our rank, because back in Stalag 3, we wore a rank, because in the camp we kept American military discipline. The senior American officer in the camp was senior, and he's the guy who spoke to the Germans inside the camp. Inside the camp, I never spoke to the Germans at all, other than inside the camp we had our own military discipline.
Was there anything that helped you get through being any particular thing, like writing letters, that helped you kind of get through this time?
No. Yes. No. Yes. No. I wrote letters, but my letters never got home, because I was only there 2.5 or 3 months. And by the time it went from here to there, and the letters never got to me. Now, some of the other guys got letters, because it took 2.5 or 3 months for the letters to get through. Esprit de corps, oh hell, we knew we were the biggest and the baddest bunches SOBs in the world. Kids like, well, weren't you scared? I said, hell no. We're too young and full of tea and vinegar. You know, we survived. Now, we knew other guys had been killed. Now, let's face it. Many of the guys there off of bomber crews, many of the bomber crews were killed. We knew this. Some of the bomber crews had nightmares. These guys really caught hell. But as a fighter pilot, in my airplane, the only blood I'd ever see was my own blood. I never saw anybody get killed. To me, flying was still exciting. Bomber crews, that's a different story. But esprit de corps, nobody had to tell us we were great. We knew we were the baddest bunch of SOBs in the world.
Now, what you just used a term that I'm not familiar with. You're referring to your group a few minutes ago. That I don't know what. I'll have to get back to that. But what was the lag time between when you think your family thought you had? Did they get a missing in action?
Oh, I surmised when I got home, my family got a KIA telegram,
What's KIA stand for?
killed in
Killed in
action,
action. Okay.
about less than 3 weeks to a month. By that time I was a POW, and the International Red Cross sent a telegram home that I was a POW. I suspect I went down in August In September, latter part of September, I suspect they got a telegram, KIA. October, middle of October to November, I suspect POW. I suspect that time.
Is there a record of how that was documented to the government? I mean, did they think you were gone too, or they knew that you?
Well, when I got back, the guys in my flight, see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We were the last 4 guys to go across the target. See, 4, 8, 12. We were the last 4. And Danny, number 2, when he got hit, he put it down in the water because he was afraid to bail out. Number 1 and number 2, number 1 and 3. I'm number 4. 1 and 3 got through, and they looked back. They saw my airplane go in. Didn't see me get out. So they thought I was killed. They're the ones who reported me KIA.
So is there a document that says that you had died? I mean, on record, you know?
Somewhere in the record, I couldn't find it. I researched it, but I couldn't find it. And the KIA telegram, I remember seeing it when I got home, 1945. But during the years, it disappeared. It was with my mother's records. I did not have it. And now the one for POW, I've got the one for POW, the final telegram that came.
Can you imagine what they went through? I mean,
Well,
just that emotional, that roller coaster of thinking you're gone.
I got home and I was told that my mother's hair turned white in a week. That's the kind of anxiety in the family.
Did you have other brothers who were in service?
No,
Okay.
my brother's 9 years younger. He was in high school at the time. My sister's in the middle.
So let's go back to the day that you were freed. How did that day play out?
It was fantastic.
Like,
Joyous. Oh God. Now, see, we knew where the American forces were. We knew where Patton was because we were listening to the radios. We had seen fighter P-51 Mustangs flying over the camp for a week. We knew exactly where they were. And but when the Third Army with the tanks, with General Patton and his Third Army the tanks crashed through the barbed wire fence. That was great. Oh, to see those guys. And right behind it, they pulled in a field kitchen. Hot bread. Oh my God. Mashed potatoes. Steak. And of course we got sick.
Your body wasn't used to it.
Heck no. Our stomachs are shriveled. But just to eat it, and we knew we were going to get sick. Fantastic. Right behind it, Paymaster. He pulled in with a stack of money, and as you went by, you saluted, and your ID, he paid you $80. I had $80.
Everyone got the same amount?
Yeah, every officer, $80. I go around, I think, wait a minute, let me go back and get in line again. He didn't even look up. $80. I said, wow.
You get back in line again?
No. No.
And where'd you go once you were released? What was your next step?
Well, first of all, somebody said, hey, there's a place down there with a lot of dead people. Where? Down the road. So we got a Jeep. The guys in my room. All the guys in my room, we stayed together. So we got a Jeep. What is it in the Army? We call it,
procured?
Mm-hmm. You could smell the place a mile before you got to it. The ovens were still warm where they were burning bodies. Ovens were still half-burned bodies. Dachau. I saw Dachau. Got sick. Everything you've seen about Dachau is true. Table covered with hair. Because before you burned the bodies, they had somebody cutting off the hair. They used the hair for seat cushions. Table covered with dentures. Before you burned the body, had somebody with a pair of pliers pulling out the gold and the amalgam. Thousands of dead bodies. Horribly. Man's inhumanity to man. So before we were flown by C-47. The next day, we put on a C-47 and flown to Verdun, near Paris. We're supposed to hitchhike to Le Havre to get on a boat and come back home. So I got to Verdun and went to Paris, stayed in Paris for 2 weeks, down in Pig Alley. Never got to the Eiffel Tower. I had a ball. The other 6 guys in the room were all together. And we stayed there for 2 weeks. We thought we were AWOL. When we got to Le Havre, Camp Patrick Henry, or whatever the camp was.
What country?
This is Le Havre, the city of Le Havre, right up on the Baltic, where we'd catch and report to a camp and assign to the boat. Okay. Simply get on a boat. But we're back on American roads, officially back on the United States roads where we got there. We were assigned to a place on the boat, and the boat went from Le Havre to England, took on some more passengers, some more sailors, and we crossed the Atlantic to New York Harbor.
Did you reconnect with the pilot that you were in camp with?
No, all by myself. And ironically, back to racism, segregation, and discrimination.
Did you have that sense on the boat going back?
Oh
or
no, on the boat was fantastic.
Between soldiers, it was not like that?
All coming home from Germany. And walking down the gangplank, back in the harbor of New York, past the Statue of Liberty, flags waving, lo and behold, walking down the gangplank, little white soldier at the bottom, whites to the right and niggers to the left. Back to the United States of America, back to my home country, back to segregation, discrimination, back to the way it was. I was assigned to 30 days active duty, 30 days leave, back to Detroit for 30 days, and then back to Tuskegee Army Airfield, and to the assignment as an instructor at Tuskegee, as an instructor instructing other cadets coming through, where I spent until Tuskegee Army Airfield was closed up a year later.
You stayed in the armed forces till 69, was it?
Yeah, but you see, I was at Tuskegee Army Airfield until it was closed in '46. Moved to Lockburn, Ohio, outside of Columbus, for approximately 6 months to a year, and then separated from service. Back to Detroit, and I went out to Selfridge and joined the reserves. Stayed in the Air Force Reserves until 1969.
Were you ever called up for any kind of duty in between?
luckily.
Yeah.
When Korea happened, as a reservist, I was in a position at a mobilization assignment. I did not have to go to Korea. I stayed in to the beginning of Vietnam, and by that time, I was not a pilot. Oh, I went as an administrative officer in the reserves, and promoted to a lieutenant colonel, and then in '69, I said, I've got enough. Let me go. I retired.
So, along the way, did you win any? Did you earn any awards or medals?
Oh, I've got 11 medals in my bio, somewhere in my bio. The only ones I profess are the Air Medal, the POW Medal, European Medal, plus others.
And you won a Purple Heart as well. Earned a
Purple Heart, yes.
This is not your plane,
No,
but similar to yours.
similar.
That looks like chrome. Shiny.
Yeah, that was chrome.
Was yours chrome?
Yeah, it was shiny. With a red nose. All P-51 Mustangs in Italy were red noses. All the other groups, the white groups, all P-51s had red noses.
Now, the tail on that is a checkered.
Yeah. This was a picture taken somewhere where we reproduced it. Did it make it?
Is it glare? Can you see glare? Or?
No, it's good.
Okay. So that was not necessarily a Tuskegee
No.
plane.
No.
But you were not referred to as Tuskegee then, right? That didn't come about until
No.
after the war.
Oh, that came about after 1970,
Yeah.
when we all got together and organized ourselves into chapters. Our veterans, we were chapters in different cities.
So you were just referred to as
Black airmen, we were airmen,
Okay.
period.
Right. When your parents got that letter, either letter, was
Telegram or
yeah,
letter.
yeah, was there time? Did you ever get another letter from them after you were captured, so that you knew they knew you were still alive, or there wasn't time maybe for that to happen?
No,
When you got home, I mean, did they still think you were a prisoner? I mean,
my family knew about me when I got home, when I got back to New York.
okay.
Yeah, when I got back to New York. That's when I was able to call and let them know.
How was that call?
Oh,
I can't imagine what that.
hoo, hoo, hoo. I still get goosebumps when I think about it.
Who
Because
answered?
They had, well, let's see, I don't remember who answered. Because whoever answered yelled and shouted and hooped and shouted, and telephone just, yeah, I don't remember who answered. But momentous occasion.
How many in your family?
Oh, heavens. Mother, father. Well, at the time, my brother was there, but my sister was not. Because my sister was at Clark College in Atlanta. Yeah, she was at Clark in Atlanta. But between my father, my brother, plus all the neighbors,
Imagine it was a party.
the poet part was something else.
So you went straight from New York, you said, to
Detroit.
Detroit.
Hmm.
By train? They send you by train, or?
I don't remember. Yeah, it had to be by train. Had to be by train. Yeah, it had to be.
Have you ever reconnected with the soldier who went with you to that first camp? At reunions or anything? Daniels or?
Oh, yeah. Robert Daniels.
Yeah.
We stayed in contact with Robert Daniels until he died. Yeah, he died, oh Lord, about 10 years ago. Richard Macon, the guy with a broken neck, when the Germans, when we went to Dulag for interrogation, the Germans put him in a hospital. I didn't see Richard until I got back to Detroit, and I became a school teacher. And 2 years later, Richard came to Detroit as a math teacher from the University of Indiana. So I knew Richard Macon until he died 4 years ago.
Amazing how worlds
Amazing.
collide
We stayed
again.
together. He came to Detroit, and we'd travel and do presentations to different schools. We go to conventions. In fact, I knew Richard just like a buddy, a real buddy.
Wow. And where did you teach elementary or high school? Or?
Elementary science,
Okay.
4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grades, from 1954 until 1980. The last 10 years as an assistant principal. Yeah. I hated administration, but that's the way life is.
It's tough at the top.
Yeah.
How do you think like your military experience helped you in your classroom?
Well, first of all, you learn the military discipline. Learn how to take orders. Learn how to deal with people. Learn how to be a politician, literally. Learn how to take orders. This is a good idea. It's a good practice. Learn how to deal with people. It helped in civilian life. Part of the problem is something else we say. All of our teenagers need to put in a year of basic training. Learn how to take orders. Learn how to cope. Learn how to deal with adversity. Life is not fair. Let's face it. Learn how to deal with it. It's all part of life. It's all part of life.
I just want to go back for a minute to your experience at Dachau. Was it just a walkthrough, or did you have responsibilities there?
Oh, Dachau? Well, you imagine, you ride in, you get off a Jeep, and you look at everything going around. Now remember now, no television, no ID, no Time magazine, no movies. First time, I had no idea. The odor of burning human flesh. It's a sweet, nasty odor I'll never forget. You know, we remember barbecues, the odor of burned barbecue. But to see these, first time I ever saw skeletons. A whole pile of dead bodies, and the damn thing was moving because flies, maggots, and the gas underneath. The odor. And then you see these other people walking around in these striped pajamas, and they're skinny, faces all skinny. Some of the people couldn't even move, but they're still alive. How do you describe it? You got to have movies. And when I walk in and give a presentation, and you have somebody look at me and say, well, Mr. Jefferson, you know, Dachau was a hoax. Then I have to use some expletive, deletive, mother use. And I carry some pictures of Dachau around with me. Oh, by the way, here in Detroit, there's a Holocaust Museum. Have you ever been to it?
Yes.
Out on Orchard Leaf Road?
Mm-hmm.
You need to go.
Yeah, my father has a tape there.
Orchard Lake and 13 Mile Road.
It is an incredible.
Go. Orchard Lake and 13. I was there 2 months ago. I did a presentation because I'd been to Dachau. I saw Dachau, and it's got these pictures.
So the prisoners were still there. The Germans had fled,
Mm-hmm.
and the Red Cross coming in to help, or
Boy, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. But at the same time, whenever I do this for a group of high school kids, especially if they're black, I say, hey, wait a minute. You cry and you bitch and you bellyache. Oh, Mr. Jefferson, the Jews killed the Germans and this. Hey, wait a minute. Back up. What the hell's been going on in Burundi? What happened in Nigeria? You're black. What happens? Still going on. This guy Taylor. What's going on in Somalia? Wake up. You've got a computer. You've got the internet. By the way, do you black kids understand Burundi? Belgium colonized Burundi. They raped the country, took all the gold and everything out of it. But then when Burundi got its freedom, and Belgium had to leave, while they were there, they gave the good jobs to the Tutsis. The Tutsis were the tall blacks. They were tall, they were light-skinned, and the nasty, dirty jobs to the Hutus, H-U-T, the Hutus. The nasty, dirty jobs. And the conflict between the tall, light, bright, to the short, dark, nasty conflict. And the Tutsis killed the Hutus. The Hutus killed the Tutsis. Then Nigeria. Ethnic hatred. Ethnic. What's going on in the world today? What happened to Yugoslavia? The Muslims killed us. What's going on today in India, where the Muslims destroyed the Buddha, the tall 16th-story Buddha? What's going on in Egypt, where the Muslims are killing the Coptics, the Christians? Ethnic hatred. Iran fought Iraq for 8 years. Muslims. But Sunnis killing Shiites. Shiites killing Sunnis. Ethnic hatred in the world today. What happened in the Moulin Rouge in Malaysia? Pol Pot. Japan brought women from South Korea as prostitutes for their soldiers in World War II. Japan killed millions of Chinese in World War II. Ethnic hatred. Just because the Germans killed the Jews, don't think about them separately. Let's face it. Ethnic hatred over the whole world, and it's still going on today. We talk about slavery in the United States. Blacks are brought as slaves, but I got news for you. Slavery is still going on today in Africa, in the Middle East. And by the way, you women, my God, women are still catching hell in the world today.
Any advice from your not just World War II experience, but your life?
My life?
For our generation, to say how can we move forward in a positive way from what you've gained in your life?
Only because, well, freedom ain't free. Somebody had to die to get me to the place where I got. A hell of a lot of black slaves and black folks had to die in this country to get me to the place where I was able to be a teacher and get to be a lieutenant colonel. I didn't get it all by myself. Too many people had to die in the Civil War. See, the Civil War was on slavery. And the hell with these people talking about black supremacy, Southern hospitality and all this stuff. The Civil War was fought for slavery, period. And too many of my ancestors had to suffer through the 1920s and the 1930s and the 1940s for me to get to the place where I could be loud and stand up and hoop and shout. There had to be more Martin Luther Kings who had to die. Kennedy had to die. Johnson brought about civil laws. Johnson did what Kennedy could not do. And things had to tell. I tell kids today, life ain't free. You're loud, crude, ignorant. Somebody had to fight to get the right for you to jump up and be loud and be crude and assert, I am so big. You're not that big, let's face it. And, let me explain something else. I grew up in a Polish neighborhood in Detroit. I had to fight to get home a lot of times. And one day, I was in a fight. And my mother said, what happened? He called me a nigger. She said, Alexander, are you a nigger? No, Mom, I'm not a nigger. Then why were you fighting? My mother taught me it's not what you call me. It's what I react to. I got to the position when I was 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. Whatever he said, that's his problem. Disregard whatever he says. Never react to it. Because when you react to it, then he plays you like you play a monkey on a stick. As an officer in the United States Air Force, when that general told us that blacks were not going to go to his officers club, that was an insult. You take it as an insult, knowing his position. You back up and treat him as if he's a lousy, crummy, stinking, no good SOB. Do not become affected. Turn right around and move on. Leave it. And then today it's been proven. Nobody makes me react. Ironically, today we have been taught by television to react to what people say. He called me so, and I'm going to get him. And when you do, you put yourself right with him. It's almost like a Christian. There's a saying, you don't become part of the problem. And it has been proven to my profit. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. That's it. Why I get to be me? Everybody's crazy except you and me. See all these crazy people out there? They're stupid, idiotic. And then sometimes I'm not so sure about you. Because even your closest friends turn out to be lousy, crummy, stinking, no good traitors. And you still have your own guts on the inside. It's hard to say. I love me,
Well, I sure am grateful for your time and your stories and.
It's an excuse for me to yak.
No, and it's
it's an honor, and thank you for.
I
your
just
service.
had hope.
The reason we're free to do what we do today is because of the service of the armed forces in that war and previous wars and wars since then.
By the way,
And we
whenever
don't
I
have
go
any
out,
illusion.
I always speak to a lot of groups of people, a lot of white people, a lot of blacks, and it gets real personal. Then I ask the audience, what year were white women given the right and privilege to vote?
19th Amendment to the Constitution.
The year I was born. 1921.
I was going to say 20. I was 1 year off.
If white women were not allowed to vote by the men, how in the hell do you think black people felt? Up until Mississippi, the Freedom March, Medgar Evers was killed because he was out going around getting black people to register to vote. Not to vote, to register. How do I feel about this country treating me as a second-class citizen? Why I go to fight for this country and come back and tell me I'm just a nigger, which is degrading. And but let's face it, now we got a black president. Then to have a man call the president a liar on television, and Rush Limbaugh says he'd rather see the country go down than see him be a president to be successful. Racism down here still going on. And I know good and damn well, wherever I walk, when people see me, all of a sudden it's that feeling. You disrespect the president simply because he's black. For the past past month, the debt. Why, in the controversy, has Obama been seen with Boehner debating about the debt? In the first place, the budget is the responsibility of Congress. Why has the newspapers put Obama as responsible for the debt, when the debt should have been put by Congress, put to the president, and he can either sign it or veto it? But the public sees the president. This is racism. Period. It is an example of me and how I see the world. They would rather see the country go down than see him as successful. And that's what's happening. First time we
could spend a few hours just on that topic.
Well, I'm sure there's lots of people out there that want to get to see you. So.
Thank you.